What's up, everybody? Once again, it is I, James, coming to you from the Nerdy Mewzings podcast studio. Today, I am joined by Mr. Chris Jones. How you doing today, Chris?
Doing good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Chris Jones, super artist.
Yep. I
Yeah.
did not come up with that myself. That was actually my wife.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so Instagram kind of started. My wife, I've been drawing pretty much my whole life, and my wife's like, "You got to get this stuff on social media," and I was like, I'm not super big into that anyways. So she
Yeah.
actually made the account for me, and so I figured, she made it, might as well start posting, and it's kind of how it started, man.
That's
Um,
awesome. So she views you as a super artist. That's pretty cool to have that level of
yeah,
support.
yeah, but it's your wife, right? So you would
True.
hope that she
You
would support
feel,
you and tell you, kind of like your mom, like, "Oh, honey, it's the best. It's great. Let's put it on the
yeah.
fridge." But it's definitely one of those things where art has always been an escape for me. So none of my motivations were ever to get popular on social media or to really do anything other than to just draw. So it's kind of funny how it's been going. I just hit 110,000 followers on Instagram,
Yeah.
which is insane to me that 110,000 people, whether some of them are bots or not, are interested enough in my art to kind of follow along, which is kind of cool. Um, but
I,
yeah,
re-
man,
I
go
was going to
ahead.
say, I remember like several years ago where it was at, and then all of a sudden it just started climbing. And I remember it seemed like every other week you were
Sure.
posting a thank you for,
Yeah.
20,000, this many,
Y-
this many. It was so cool to
r-
see.
It's wild too because I get messages all the time like, "Hey man, like what advice do you have?" or like how'd you get your following? It's all organic. I literally have not paid for any kind of promotions, nothing. Just purely I draw, I upload, and people either like it or they don't.
Yeah.
But I can say that from the perspective of a few years ago when it started really catching on fire, if you will, was just doing fan art. I think when I started doing like DC fan art of kind of
Yeah.
redesigning some of the outfits and kind of made that huge collage, that's when a lot of people started jumping on board, and I gained like 10,000 followers within a month or something like that. It was insane. It was like 20 to like 30 to
Yeah.
40 within a month or two, which is kind of cool. I mean, that's the only secret I have in terms of because most characters people have their favorite character, they have some kind of a relationship with those characters, right? I've always
Right.
been a Thor guy or a Hulk guy, the big strong characters that smash everything.
You and me both, brother.
Yeah, so for me, I have a lot of history of those characters. But yeah, I mean, you draw characters that people can relate to or that they're interested in, and you get attention. But it was it's kind of funny that way. So
It's cool that it happened naturally. It's so hard with social media to know what's going to take off. Like, you'll just post
yeah,
something random and not think too much of it, and it takes off. But the thing you really finally craft and post, like for me with jujitsu videos and things that I'll post, it'll be like the most random thing will just like take off, and it's like your new reel already has 10,000 views in an hour, and I'm like,
dude.
how? Like I did the same thing I do every time.
Yeah, it's insane. And like, and I've talked and I've met like people like you, and I've met other, professional artists and, Marvel, all this. And it 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 kind of blows me away, and I've had this conversation with everybody is again, I will spend sometimes days on a picture, probably 15 hours or so, and I'll get, maybe 1,000 likes, 2,000 likes, and then I'll spend maybe 45 minutes doing a doodle, and that doodle will get 40,000 likes, and I'm like, why? Like, how? Like, and it's funny to me that, in my head, what I'm like, oh, that looks cool. That's what I like, isn't necessarily what the other people, what people like, you know? So it's,
True.
art is super subjective in the fact that I can draw something or I like a particular artist and I go, oh man, I want to draw like that, or this guy inspires me, or this girl
Hmm.
inspires me to draw. And other people, it can do nothing for them. And that's kind of the funny thing about social media is that a lot of the people that I like, you know, like Ryan Otley, Ron, I saw Ron was on your
Yeah, yeah. Ron's
podcast. Like,
awesome.
dude, I
Yeah.
have fan art of his from his Hulks from
Oh
freaking,
yeah.
I don't know, 20 years ago that I
Yep.
still have. So he was an inspiration, you know, and a few others, but like, I'll look at their Instagram page and they maybe have 10,000 followers or whatever. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's crazy.
it just blows me away. Even some of the, like, the newer guys that are killing it, I'm like 5,000. So, following, in my head, it doesn't really equate to what people think it does. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know, some people might get big headed, or, you know, get, you know, on the other spectrum, get defeated from the fact that they're putting out content and they're not getting followers and all this stuff. But, you know, my suggestion, or my point of view to, you know, the people I talk to, is just do it because you enjoy doing it, and you will find a group of people that will enjoy that as well.
Yeah,
But
that's great advice. Like, post what you enjoy, and you just
sure,
never know what's going to get picked up and show up.
sure,
Like, if Instagram decides to show it on that feed, like the recommendations feed,
right, right.
it picks it up. Do you follow Richard Friend at all?
I don't think so.
Okay,
And
you need to follow Richard Friend. He's got
okay,
a great YouTube channel and everything. Lots of great art advice. He inked for Wildstorm and DC and stuff for a
okay,
long time, and now he's transitioning over. Well, several years ago, he transitioned over to full time penciler and everything, and he's doing
okay.
his own creator own stuff. But he gives a lot of advice, and it's funny. One of the things he said about social media was that he noticed that whenever he posted a picture where he had his hand and his pen or his pencil in the picture, that got more engagement than just a normal picture of the art.
Yeah,
So he said he would just fake it and like put it. He's like, I'm not even actually working on it. I just put that in there just so it'll get picked up.
you know what it is, and this is what I think it is. It's the psychology of, I think people see that and they go, "Oh, this person is doing this with their hand," which translates to, "I can also do this with my hand."
There you go.
So I think that's the psychology of it. And that's the thing, is like, when you go and view like traditional art versus digital, you know, there's people battling that probably to the end of time, of if it's real art, if it's not art, you know, whatever the case may be. But I've found, and what I've seen, is that most traditional art, you know, people inking or penciling, it gets significantly more views from what I've seen than doing digital art, because even though you're still going through the same motions with your hand and all this, people, the psychology of it is like, oh, that the art program's doing it all for you.
Yes.
So in their head, it's not as impressive, if you will, that you're doing something digitally versus a tangible piece of paper and pencil and pen.
Yep.
Um, but I will tell you that from my perspective, I grew up just pencil, pen, you know, stuff like that. And I did that for 20 years. I got like a little bamboo tablet, and I couldn't for the life of me make that thing work the way I wanted it to, because it would always kind of be, the cursor would be off a little bit or whatever. So it drove me nuts. But it wasn't until I got the iPad Pro that I really started doing digital art. And what was interesting for me in my person is that right now I'm sitting in a bed.
Right.
By getting the iPad Pro, I was able to bring it to the couch, to the bedroom, and I could doodle without having to bust out a handful of markers, a pencil, you know, roll over and get stabbed in the bed. So it enabled me to actually draw more than pencil and pen. And I can't say that's for everybody, but for me, that drastically increased my repetitions in terms of drawing, by having that tablet. So there is a lot of good benefits to a digital tablet. But I mean, traditional art's amazing. I love traditional art. I think there's definitely, I think what's Ricardo Frederici, I think is his name.
Mm-hmm.
That dude's stuff is phenomenal.
Insane.
It's so
Yeah.
realistic. Pencil, like I can watch his videos all day. Esad Rybik, I think is his name. He did a run on Thor with the God Killer.
Yep.
I that book is amazing. But for anybody who is trying to level up their art skills, I think I'm not saying go out and buy a digital tablet, but what I am saying is it could enable you to draw more because of the ease of use. And then the other thing that comes with that is because it's digital and you can undo all of your mistakes, it allows you to experiment more with your art
Yep.
because you can go, oh, well, I saw somebody do this on a video. Let me try this. And then you go, yeah, it doesn't look that great. Let me just undo that. Whereas if you're working on like a piece behind you, right? If you're
Yeah,
inking
I was
that
just gonna
in
say,
and you
man.
go, man, like I want to try this new technique or whatever, but I
Yeah.
don't want to ruin hours I put into drawing this thing. So again, digital tablet is just is a tool, just like anything else you can use in the art field or construction or whatever. If you use it in a certain capacity, you can get a lot out of it. And that's always been kind of my go-to suggestion for people who are trying to just get more into art. You know, hey, like I haven't drawn in 10 years, but I want to get back into it. Just draw. You know,
Yeah. Yeah,
so
that's the secret, right? Like whether you're using an iPad or whether you're on a little notepad or whatever, like
sure.
whatever makes you draw more, makes it more accessible for you. And you know, we're in a culture of convenience, so obviously, like things that save time and you know makes it so you have that ability, like you said, no matter where you're at, you can be working on that iPad. And I
Sure.
know there's numerous pros now that it's like their whole workflow is Procreate or Clip Studio, and they're
Yeah.
literally doing penciling, inking, coloring their entire work all from there. And
Yeah. You don't
yeah,
have to scan stuff in. You don't have to do this. You don't have, I mean, it has definitely made it more efficient. And I mean, depending on the artist, right? Like I try to, I personally try to treat the iPad as traditional as I can with the art.
yeah,
I mean, don't get me wrong, like the glow effects and all these, like I'm not skilled enough to do that traditionally, you know, and that's one of those things that a lot of people are like, hey, you do this. So it's super easy stuff. But it's one of those things where Procreate for me was there's enough tools there for me to do what I want to do. You know, you can get into the bigger programs and the special effects and all that, but I think most artists, at least in the comic book scene, I think it's a phenomenal program, and they keep updating it with perspective, rulers and all this
yeah,
stuff that you can help draw buildings and stuff, which was like an exclusive feature on some of these other programs. But
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
man,
you had to have the pro version of you know, Clip Studio, or previously I think they called it Manga Studio. and
right. Yeah, I had
and
that. Yeah,
yeah, you had to have like the pro version to be able to use all the perspective grid and
right.
perspective rulers and all that fun stuff. Yeah, I
Uh,
agree with you. Like as far as the iPad goes, like I've tried every digital device out, you know, just like you were talking about. Like I have my tablet monitor here that I used to draw on, and I used to have the Wacom tablets and all of that. It's
and
like you said, it was just something was off about it. I just never could get that feel. But for whatever reason, the iPad feels like the most intuitive digital drawing tool that I've used.
yeah, man. It well, and the thing is like, so I got before that when I was using Mega Studio, I was using the I think it was like a Huion tablet or
Huion,
a
yeah.
Yanova, something like that, and it was like a 20-inch monitor
Yeah, this
because
is a
I couldn't.
Unova. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, because I couldn't
yeah,
afford the $4 or $5 or $6,000 Wacom
yeah.
Cintiq or whatever, which was like that was the bar to get to, I think, for an artist was to get that
That's
tablet.
the Rolls Royce of the
Um,
drawing tablets.
yeah.
Yeah,
But the thing is, man, is like even nowadays, you know, I could probably swing something like that, but I the iPad just does everything I need it to do, and it's a fraction of the cost. Like,
And the
and
portability, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, you don't have to be hooked up to
yeah.
anything. You put it in your backpack. You can draw on the plane. You
It's
know,
funny.
it's
Todd McFarlane used to take his entire Cintiq monitor and take it on the plane and travel with it so he could
that's
ink and
awesome.
stuff. Yeah, yeah. So
That's
now I don't know if he's still doing that or if maybe he's got an iPad now. I haven't seen him post anything with an iPad.
I think the first person who kind of turned me on to that was John Roush, I think is his last name, or Rosh, the
Hmm.
colorist who did most of the Invincible comic
Yep,
book, which that is one, if not the only comic book series I have every issue of, because
yep.
that book, Ryan Otley's art,
Crazy.
plus John Roush's coloring, that for me is what motivated me to get better at art. And everybody has one of those figures that they go, oh man, this is what I want to draw, or this is how where my skill level I want it to be, right?
Yeah.
But I mean that run that those guys did, man, it was
I can't
phenomenal.
say enough. Yeah, I
Yeah,
can't say enough good things about
it,
it. And
and I still bust them out.
If Ryan's listening, because I know he pops in here every now and again, like he knows, like he's my favorite artist, and
Yep, same,
Invincible is like crazy inspiration. And
same.
I'm gonna get him on the podcast here. I keep bugging
Yeah,
him.
that'd be cool, man. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I mean that even that comic, I mean the writing, Robert Kirkman, like that stuff it was phenomenal book. I mean it was,
yeah.
but John Roush, he actually was using an iPad Pro to do most of the coloring. So I was like, holy crap! If this guy who's s- awesome professional colorist, whatever, is using this to do that, then I need to get that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of was my introductory really to doing digital art. And again, I just kind of do it now just because of the efficiency of it, instead of, and I still doodle and draw with pencil and pen, at work and stuff like that. So it's,
Right.
you don't lose your skill by using a tablet versus, pen and paper, but you will try to undo stuff on a traditional piece, and then
Yeah.
realize, hey man, this is not digital.
Whoops.
Yeah, so that's been kind of fun, but yeah, I mean, it's you know one of those things where
To
I
each
don't know,
their
just
own,
motivate.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that Ryan, he started doing a lot of his stuff on the iPad way back. Like he was doing a lot of he would do his roughs and everything on the iPad,
okay,
and then he would, put it in the computer, print it out on his large format printer straight onto the board, and then do the traditional finishes and everything. So he had that hybrid workflow. I'm not sure what he's doing nowadays. I'm pretty sure he's still doing that because he does have original art to sell. So
sure, yeah,
at least part of his process is traditional these days. But yeah, he was adopting that. Like if you look in the back of some of the Invincible trade paperbacks and stuff, like I forget around what issue he started to do that, but at first I think he was doing it with Photoshop and something, and then after that he switched to the iPad, and now I know he does a ton of stuff on there. It's just, guy like that traveling to conventions every weekend and
right,
everything else, like the level of productivity you're able to maintain on the go with something
sure.
like that is a huge time saver and everything else.
Well, even that, like I've only been to one convention ever. Like I'm probably like the most out of touch artist on the planet when it comes to comic books and all of that. Like I'll know like a few names and that's it. But I went to one, man, and even doing that, it's depending on who you are, your personality. Like I'm a pretty introverted guy by default, but going to conventions and dealing with people and all of that, and to also still be able to have the peace of mind to draw and stuff like that. That's definitely a skill set that
Yeah.
you have to acquire just kind of going through those motions, man. Because I mean, I grew up with five brothers, so I was in a big household my whole life, so I'm kind of used to, pans dropping, people wrestling
A
and
little
stuff
bit of
like.
the chaos,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so I function pretty well in that, but it's one of those things where sometimes I have to have that peace of mind to actually sit down and be creative. And if there's too much going on, man, I just can't. I actually did watch one of your clips. I forget who it was. I think it was the twins that they were talking
Oh yeah,
about, like
Guy
neuro,
and Ian Dorian. Yeah,
right, like the neurodivergence, and
yeah,
it was actually pointed out to me recently that I have ADD or ADHD, which is one of those
yeah.
things where I'm like, no, I don't have that,
Mm,
because I'm kind of just, do my thing, but I'm on the end of, I think, hyperfixating.
mm-hmm.
So whenever I kind of like, okay, this is the project, this is what we need to do, I will, tunnel vision in to getting that done. Whereas my wife is the exact opposite, and she'll start 27 projects and not finish any of
That's
them.
yeah, yeah. That's the different ends of that spectrum, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
uh, it's kind of
I think
cool,
a
man.
lot of people have, some form of ADHD or, a lot of creative people. It seems to be a common theme, the people I've been talking to. And I think a lot of us don't realize maybe that we do struggle with it or do have it to some degree because maybe we've learned how to manage it and how to like
Sure,
channel it. Like you're saying, like for you,
right,
it kind of works out good because you can, dial in and have
right,
that hyper focus,
right.
element of it. Whereas other people, it pulls them 20 different ways and they can't sit there and get that one thing done. It's difficult.
Right. I mean, it's good. It's definitely it has its disadvantages too. I mean, obviously I didn't choose it for myself, but also with the hyperfixation comes with burning yourself out on listening to the same song 1,000 times over and over for 2 days straight, and then go, okay, I'm done listening to that song for the rest of my life because I've overkilled it for myself. So
Right.
I wrestle with that too, where I'm like, all right, this is the song of the week, and me and my wife joke about it, but um, you know, kind of like you said, I mean, you kind of learn how to manage and manipulate your pros and cons to be productive, if you will. And
Yeah.
art has always been a uh, a very easy outlet for me. I kind of grew up with my dad, great artist. He motivated me to draw. He was kind of it was funny, in his school, the art teacher was basically like, "Hey, man, there's not a whole lot I can teach you, so you kinda just draw a picture and you get an A in the class." So it was,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was
That's
kind of
cool.
funny. So, most of my brothers kinda have the art talent, but I'm the only one who kind of kept kept with it, if you will, kinda putting in the reps of, or the 10,000 hours or whatever it is you wanna call it, to kind of evolve the skill. So it's definitely I think art's fun. Just like with anything, people, oh well, this guy is just naturally good, or this guy this. What I mean, art's just like anything, man. Like, sure, you're gonna have some people who are more inclined to be see things more clearly, or catch on quicker, but it's just like anything, man. If you put in the work and you put in the effort and put in, the training, you can become a good artist. And
Yeah.
I remember it was a YouTube video. So this is not me coming up with this idea, mind you. The guy, I forget who it was. I think it was the guy who did the Inktober. He started
Jake
the Inktober.
Parker.
Right. I think he was talking about that, where he was saying, you have kind of like your God-given talent, if you will, and then you have your trained talent, or whatever terminology he used. Whereas, like, okay, if this guy is naturally good at this, but then also puts in the effort, he's probably still going to be better than you at that, just because he's got that combination, like the Michael Jordans of basketball and the LeBron James, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But again, if that same guy doesn't put in the effort, the guy who does is going to be probably better than them at art. And I think that just applies to most things in life. So
Yeah. Yeah, there's a saying that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, right? So
Yep,
it's kind of
that's
one of
it.
those things.
That's
Yeah,
it.
Jake Parker, he had that video that was very helpful. It was called Finished, Not Perfect. That
Hmm.
was another video he did that, because I struggle with perfectionism.
Right.
I like that Hulk back there. I'll sit there and get it like almost finished and then see all the flaws and want to like erase the whole thing and start
Yep.
over because I can do it better now,
Oh, oh yeah. Well, and that's the thing, man, is like, and there's a lot of people like I used to be that way too. And I mean I still am to an extent, but the way I kind of look at it, because I've done not the sidetrack, but I've done construction for the last 13 years doing HVAC install and stuff like that. But it's one of those things where you're going to, if you keep putting in the time in something, you will get better and you will be able to look back on your previous work and go, man, that's not that great, or hey, I can do that significantly better now. But it's just one of those things you kind of have to make, come to terms with it in your head and go, okay, hey, this is just another log on the fire in terms of getting me to where I want to go, right? So I try not to dwell on it as much, but I think probably most artists struggle with that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, they definitely do. Because the
yeah,
last artist I had on, I asked her, how do you deal with like being a perfectionist? She's like, actually, that's my biggest struggle, and I'm still working on that. I'm like, oh, well, I'm glad it's not just me.
no, I think it's most artists, and artists are usually going to be the hardest on themselves, right? Because they're going to look and they're going to see all those things that they could have done better, or they don't like, or I don't like the way the hand looks, or the eye is
Hmm.
slightly tilted, and it's one of those things where most people look at it and be like, "Oh man, it looks great," and you're like, "No, it doesn't, because that's not right. That's not right." But one of the ways I combat that is by just doing sketch pages. And if you see it like in a lot of my posts, it's just, bodybuilder guys or buff dudes with
Yep.
no faces, in it, and it's a way to continue my art skill, kind of building them the reps and all that, but not taking it so seriously so that I have to go, oh man, you know, I need to do this better or whatever. But it's one of those things where it gives me a break psychologically from the art perspective.
Gotcha.
And it kind of allows you to do what you enjoy doing, art, and letting it be an escape versus letting it torment you because you're like, oh man, I didn't draw the arm as good as I want to. Now I have to redraw this whole thing. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
my pattern is, and this is why for me personally, art for as a hobby and then doing commissions on the side stuff works better for me and my mentality than to doing it full time, because for me I can put in that effort and then when I want to break I just take a break. So I'll put in a bunch of mental effort into doing a picture, and then probably for the rest of the month or a week or two all I will do is sketch, because it takes so much mental creativity from me
Yeah.
to do something like that. Where I go, man, I don't want to spend 4 hours drawing a glove. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to do that right now. So
Yeah,
that's kind
people
of
don't realize like how mentally draining art is. Like I think of a lot of drawing as like math.
yeah,
Like when you're looking at your different proportions and the relationship of things to one another and everything. And like if you're really, if you really get in the zone and you're dialed in and you're solving all those issues in real time while you're drawing, like I know I'm exhausted
oh
afterwards.
yeah.
And then
Well,
you flip the drawing and you see everything, all the hidden things that are wrong.
and I always thought that was funny, man, because like I'm left-handed, which I think there's a mental difference than right-handed people there because I don't know. I think there's something there. I'm no
Yeah.
expert at anything, but I'll draw everything a certain way because it's more comfortable for me. But then I'll flip the image to see it, and I'm like, oh my God, like looks like the sloth from Goonies, dude. I'm like, this guy,
Yeah.
this doesn't look. But I flip it, I'm like, okay, for whatever reason that works. That looks good.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. It's funny.
have you ever finished a picture and then you were so motivated to keep drawing that you tried to start another one and just you just couldn't because you're mentally fried.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
happens to
definitely.
me a lot where I'm like, oh man, I'm amped up. I'm ready to draw. I haven't drawn in 3 or 4 days, and then it's just I can't for the life of me do anything. It's just
Yeah.
it's very strange.
It is. Yeah, and I think we're all wired like a little bit different in that regard. Like some people can continue to keep that momentum and keep going, and then for others of us it's like draining. Like for me to spend too much time, like I do better when I'll spend a period of time, like maybe a shorter like 30-minute period of time working on like that picture behind me, and then like step away from it for like a half an hour and come back to it. Like for me, that allows me to kind of keep that momentum a little more than if I just
Sure,
try to sit there from start to finish on it, because then I get just mentally exhausted. So I find like
sure.
if I have it out where I can see it, like I'll put it on my easel out on the kitchen counter, and it's like then I'll come back to it and notice something and fix it and then keep
Sure.
chipping away, chipping away.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know how, I think you're spot on with just people and their mentality because I don't know how animators do it, man. I don't know how they can sit there and draw keyframe after keyframe after keyframe of the same character that moved, a centimeter. Like I've tried doing it and I've messed around with some animation, but I'm
Hmm.
like, dude, my brain does not work that way, man. And my hat is off to those men and women who do that, man, because I can't do it. I'm good for maybe like pinups and even doing comic pages, man. Like I can do them, but and I've tried to do like my own comics and stuff like that, and I get all motivated and I get hyper fixated, and then within a week I burn myself out. And
Hmm.
again, it takes a certain. I mean, I think there's training there too, right? I think there's like building up to being able to do that and do more pages and having that workload extended. But for me, I just burn myself out trying to do comic page after comic page, which is why I kind of lean towards just doing like a single picture or like a pinup. So
So you're keeping it fun for yourself. You kind of know where you work best within that framework of,
yeah,
your output and everything, and not
sure,
not getting to the point where you're making it to where it's not fun for you. I think that's the fact that you've recognized that's kind of a good thing, because you're not, you could have very easily with the following you have like ditched your day job and tried to go in full time with it, but maybe
sure,
not necessarily for you. That might not necessarily be the
right.
best approach productivity wise for you. Like if you did that, you might get overwhelmed, or it might be a little too much.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right in that, and I think I've realized that, and I did the pretty, I guess it was probably a year run on working on that card game Alpha Clash, and that was a good challenge for me because I'd have to do 20 cards or 30 cards like full images and stuff like that, and most of them are just backgrounds were very minimal. It's not my forte, but even doing that, I was like, after 5 or 6 pictures, I was like, all right, man, I'm getting kind of burnt out doing this. And so I'm back doing construction. I mean, and honestly, I probably could do art full time,
Hmm.
but because I know that about myself, that like I like doing hands-on stuff. Like doing construction for me is like I enjoy doing it. Like it's not the funnest job in the world, but when I get home from that, I still have that motivation to work on my art. Like because it's kind of like that thing where I'm like, okay, I have to do these things to get to the goal, and my goal is to draw, right? Or it
Right.
used to be like play video games for 10 hours straight. Now it's, hey man, let me do this, spend time with my family, obviously, but I get to draw for an hour or two before I go to bed. And I kind of keep the candlelight going in terms of like, okay, give myself a motivator or a reason to do what I'm doing. And so for
Yeah, I
me,
think
it works out. So
yeah, I think I'm very similar in that regard. Like if I feel accomplished that I've, gotten my other tasks done, it's almost like the reward is getting the time to draw. I feel much better that way, as opposed to, oh, I'm just gonna, you know, relax all day and then draw. And it's like, yeah, but you got these other things that you need to get done, and
Right.
to make you feel more fulfilled, I guess. For me, it's more fulfilling to stay busy with several different things and then have that little reward of taking that time to practice drawing and everything.
Yeah, I mean, you've got way more on your plate than I do. I go to work, I come home, hang out with the wife and kid, and then I draw.
Yeah, it's all relative, man.
Sure,
Yeah, there's a lot family responsibilities and things.
sure.
Of huge importance. So yeah, you could put a lot on your plate, but at the end of the day, I think family comes first. So I always try to prioritize that time as well, and make sure that we're not neglecting in those areas, because when you have numerous different hobbies, it could be easy to do.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, man. Well, and me and the wife, like, we have a good system. Like, we know each other well enough now that I'll straight up tell her, be like, hey, mentally, I'm in the mode to draw. Like, if it would be cool if I could get like an hour or two just to focus on drawing. And for me, my wife going, yeah, no problem. I'll take care of the kid. I'm like, cool. That allows me to then escape, put my headphones in, put on, whatever music I'm listening to, and just focus on drawing for a few hours, and then, clocking out and then going back to taking over for the kid, kind of tagging out, and then going, okay, cool. I got my art in for the day. I get to do it again tomorrow, and,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what keeps me going. It's kind of leaving something for me to work on, if you will, on the picture. Uh, so I
Very
think,
cool. I like that. That's it's neat how you've kind of figured out this system of what works well for you. I think a lot of us struggle to find that, and I think that you've nailed down kind of the way that you work best. Your relationship with your art and everything is really cool to hear.
sure. The other thing that kind of cracks me up is I draw buff superhero guys, and I get comments all the time like, "Are you gonna draw women? Are you gonna do this? Are you gonna do?" Yes, I can draw that. I can do that, but like my go-to, or what just mentally doesn't take a lot of energy for me, is to do like muscular anatomy. And
Yeah.
I got that from my dad because he was really into bodybuilding growing up, and he went to like bodybuilding camps, like all the old school guys. And
That's
that
cool. It sounds like your dad and my dad are very similar in that regard. My
yeah,
dad is the one that got me into bodybuilding, and
yeah.
yeah, I have pictures of all the old pro bodybuilders holding me when I was a baby and
Oh, that's
stuff at the
awesome.
bodybuilding shows. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he went to some it was like some Mr. Universe camp with like Robbie Robinson and Mike
Nice.
Katz and like all those guys. And he was really into it, but that's what he drew. And so like growing up, I saw my dad's drawings and I'm like, "Oh, those are amazing." And it was buff dudes. And so
Yeah.
like for me, and he was into Thor and stuff like that growing up, so like, it was kind of just passed down to me, and cuz my dad looked up to him. So that's what he was into, and that's what I got into. And I think you'll find that most people in art, they'll gravitate towards a few specific things. Like some guys or some women only draw women.
Yep.
Some women only draw men. Some people only draw cars. Some people only draw robots, or they only do backgrounds. So it's one of those things where, sure, those artists can do other things, but that's what they want to draw, and that's what motivates them to draw. So,
Yeah.
my advice to really anybody who wants to get into art and wants to get good at doing a specific, I want to get good at drawing anatomy, or I want to get good at drawing buildings. Well, do that. Draw those. Don't. So many people try to spread themselves so thin with, well, I got to draw wicker baskets today, and I got to draw, tablecloths tomorrow, and I got to draw what you want to get good at drawing. And then from there, branch out and experiment. But for me, I'm sure there's some reasons to drawing still lifes. In art class, it's always like, hey, let's draw a wicker basket with a cloth, different materials and stuff like that. But for me, that was boring.
Yeah, same here.
I didn't enjoy drawing those. I draw a lot of Dragon Ball Z and a lot of anime and stuff growing up, and my art teacher hated it because she's like, this isn't realistic. Their chins are too pointy, their eyes are too big, X, Y, and Z. So I drew anime most of my early childhood into like high school, and then I started getting into like Americanized comics, high
So
school.
that's a good segue, because I was going to ask you like a little bit of your early beginnings with comics and things, and your love of comics like influencing your path in art.
Sure,
So
yeah.
you started to get into that stuff after being a little more influenced by anime and everything.
Yeah, so like I grew up, my friend was into like Dragon Ball Z and stuff like that, and I was like, oh, it's super cool, and so I got into drawing that, and then I drew that for shoot probably from first grade to 10th, 11th grade. So basically my early adult, or my early childhood, I should say. I drew a lot of anime. I was into a lot of anime. And then it wasn't until I kind of started getting into like, okay, well, I want to learn how to draw anatomy, right? Because like a lot of the times you'll look at superheroes and people will make up anatomy and they're like, oh, they're just lump on top of lump. And I'm like, well, I want to learn how that works. And then so American comics, to some extent, I think was more accurate to like what anatomy should look like. But obviously that's subjective. Some of the artists were just off the walls, right? So
Especially in the 90s.
right, yeah. So then I started focusing more on that. I like everybody likes Superman, Batman, the whole nine yards. So I started getting into that, but then for me, I like the more detail aspect and the shadowing aspect, the rendering that the Americanized comics had versus like the cell shading of the anime and stuff like that. But I also love the anime because in my opinion, the motion and the movement
Yeah.
and the effects that they do, I think it blows American comics out of the water, and that's just my opinion.
No, I
Um,
agree. The dynamics of it all is just
right.
insane. The camera angles, the forced perspective,
Yeah,
like
there's so much emotion. Like you'll watch I like My Hero Academia. Like I'll watch that show, and some of those fight scenes, like I'll like start getting like a little tear. I'm like, oh my god, this is so cool, and like I just I never really got that from like watching like Marvel cartoons or you know what I mean? Like for me personally, I never had that connection. Like I thought the characters are cool. Like when they started doing like the live action movies, I felt that way. I was like, oh man, this is cool. This is cool. But yeah, anime for me was like top in terms of like it really drug you into the fight, and I really enjoyed that. But I did like the American art style better in a lot of the capacities. So I kind of shift gears, and again I got into the Invincible. Like that was
yeah,
I remember I was just searching. I think I was searching some like who would win in a fight, like Superman or this guy, right? And like I think Thrag or somebody popped up and it showed like the fight scene of them in space for the first time with
yeah,
like eyeballs floating, and I was like, dude, I'm like, what the hell comic is this? I was like,
yeah.
are they allowed to do this in comic books? And so I found it. I found the book and I was like, holy crap! Like there's already so many issues out, and so I started buying, and I was like, dude, this is awesome. So
Have you
that's go
I was
ahead.
gonna say, have you ever seen the pinup that Otley did of Invincible flying through Superman, and he's got the S over his fist, like the fabric over his fist. He
I
like punched a hole through him. You ever
Yeah,
seen that one?
I think I have, and I think I've seen the one where it was like the Hulk was like smashing Superman like into the
Yeah.
floor and stuff like that.
So I
Yeah.
actually own the original pinup.
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's so cool. Yeah, it's Invincible, man. We could like spend a whole podcast talking about Otley and
Yeah.
Invincible,
Oh
and
yeah.
I mean, so Otley was kind of probably one of the standout influences for you. Or there other artists that you like to follow?
Yeah, I think like most people, like Jim Lee was a good one that people really just, his Batman and Superman, it was so iconic the way he drew them that, with the shadowing and stuff like that. Like for me that was awesome. Like so I tried getting into that. Like I was super young. Joe Mad, his stuff, I love Joe Mad.
Yeah, me too.
His stuff is great. The Darksiders game was enjoyable. Um, those guys for sure. Ed McGuinness, actually, I was really into his stuff growing up, like his Hulk runs and all that. Um, so some of his Superman stuff I was really into. Uh, but it wasn't until I got on like DeviantArt back like forever
Oh yeah.
ago that I found Eddie Nunez.
That's it
And
was you're taking the question out of my mouth because I can see his influence on your work, and I was
yeah.
going to ask you if he was somebody
Oh
that
yeah.
you were influenced
Oh
by.
yeah, dude, that guy is awesome. Like his art's so cool. It's anatomically accurate, but it's the proportions are ridiculous that you're like, okay,
Very
that's not
exaggerated.
right, but it looks good. Like it just looks good. And then I learned a lot from him, especially on the rendering aspect. Because a lot of his Copic arts and stuff like that, with like the white highlights and all that, like on tan or like gray paper, like I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, dude, that looks so good. So I learned a lot uh, of rendering and coloring from watching him. John Roush, and there was also a colorist that I found on YouTube. It was Mohammed Agbadi, I believe is his
I
name,
think I've seen his channel. Yeah.
and he does a lot of like the very like glowy rim lights and stuff like that. And he's put out a lot of videos. But yeah, his stuff, I studied his coloring, and then what was it? Marty Gracia, I believe is his name.
Hmm.
He's colored quite a bit of stuff. Some of Joe Mad stuff and some I think like Inhumans or some of the stuff, but his coloring was great. But yeah, from the art perspective, Eddie Nunez, uh, huge influence probably over the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Um, he's kind
Yeah. I
of
just got his couple of his sketchbooks, part of a Kickstarter he did recently.
yeah, I saw that and I
Yeah.
missed out on
So
that. Like
cool. So cool.
I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do that, and then I just forget, or I'm like, I'm gonna do that later, and then I totally spaces my mind, and then I'm like, oh crap, that's already done.
Bro, it's not necessarily a bad thing because this is ridiculous. The amount of stuff stacked on my floor, leaning up against the shelf, like there's a ton of stuff stacked on top of that, like the giant IDW original art books. There's like 15 of those up there. The thing's probably going to collapse any moment.
Oh sure, man.
It would be good if I forgot to back some of these Kickstarters and things.
Speaking of, I think it was it Louis LaRosa, his stuff. Talk about his stuff
Yeah.
is so awesome, dude. That megalith stuff that he's been working on.
Yeah.
Like he's kind of like one of those guys like Ricardo Federici, where it's like the realism in his pieces, and he uses all Copic markers.
Yeah.
It in I and I I've had good conversations with him, and it's like he's like, yeah, dude, it'll take me like weeks to do like a panel. And I was like, I can tell, dude, because there's so much detail in every one of your pictures. It's insane. Like,
Yeah, all the I saw a bunch of the dinosaur drawings he was doing and stuff. It was mind blowing.
yeah, like I'm not even into dinosaurs, but if he draws it, I'm into dinosaurs now. Like it's
Yeah,
freaking awesome, dude.
yeah. So those guys are just like I see it's funny to go on their posts and see the comments from other pros just being like, dude, I don't even know why I'm trying. Like you're on another level. I was
But
like,
I mean,
wow.
yeah, dude, but it feels like that. And that's kind of the funny thing with art, right? Is like everybody, again, art's subjective, dude. Like, I'll run across some artists where, what's his name? His tag is, I think, Kaiser, or
Oh, Kaiser Corningstone or something like
yeah.
that.
And
Yeah.
yeah, dude, his stuff's freaking awesome. Like some people have more cartoony-ish art,
Yeah.
but it's so unique and there's so much movement and stuff in it. It's just like I like that, but I also like the super realistic stuff. And so I'm kind of in the middle somewhere where it's like it's kind of realistic, but it's also got the cartoony vibe to it.
Yeah. Well, I
Art
really like how you do your a lot of your rendering and your light and shadows with the color.
sure.
You do remind me a lot of Otley in that regard because he would leave his work very open for the colorist to go in and do a lot of the rendering and stuff. He would give the base work for it, the structure and everything is there that's needed, but he would really leave room for the colorist to go in there and to be able to shine as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I do take a lot of influence from that because, prior to him, like the Jim Lees and all these other guys, the rendering and the David Finches and all like the rendering it's the light source is coming and you know where the light source is
Yeah.
it's coming from, right? Because like the solid blacks, like there's not really a different way of rendering that's gonna look realistic because they've already set it up in the image, which is great. But definitely, yeah, to your point, Ryan Otley set it up where there wasn't a whole lot of solid blacks in really any of his pieces. Like I think there's
Mm.
maybe a few panels in the whole Invincible series where he has like a solid black shadow cast. And again, I personally think that a colorist can make or break a picture in
Oh
a
yeah.
comic book in because in my opinion I've seen line art that isn't the best but you have a awesome colorist on that and they can make anything look good,
Yeah.
whereas you can take somebody who is like a Ryan Otley and you can have somebody color it that is subpar and it just doesn't. Yeah, I mean the art's still great but it just doesn't have that same effect. So
Yeah.
for me and my art, I I felt like my line work was pretty good. I felt like at least when it comes to drawing, muscular men, like I've got that down pretty good. Always room for improvement, but what separated me, I think, from the next level was getting good at rendering and coloring. And I put a lot of my probably last 3 or 4 or 5 years into understanding color theory more and learning how shadows work and the occlusions and like all of this stuff because that's what really takes your image to the next level is like the line art is one thing, but then getting your rendering and all that to that next level is really going to set you to the next level in my opinion.
Yeah. I think even people that color or ink, like I think it's important that they understand the fundamentals of art because I've been noticing something recently, like quite a bit in current comics in regard to the coloring, like all sorts of mistakes. Like the artist will have a shadow over here, but they'll put a shadow on the other side of the nose. It's like, no, the light's coming from there. The shadow's over here because the light's coming from there, and you're putting
Right.
also another shadow over here with your coloring. Like, what are you doing, dude?
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, it happens, dude. And like, and the other thing is like, to your point though, like in that setup, that should be, I don't want to say easy, but again, like you said, if you understand color theory and you understand basics, you would know that okay, the light source is coming here, it's casting a shadow this way. Um, but yeah, it's weird. Like, it really takes a lot for me. I don't know about you, but for me, it takes a lot to get me into a comic nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I'm heavily I don't know how you are, but I'm heavily like I base what I collect off of the artist. That's just kind of how I've always been since
yep,
I like art and I enjoy drawing and stuff. Like I've always been more into like who's on the book. Like is it an artist that I love?
right. Oh yeah, no, I 100% agree, and I am that way. Like I'll buy books that I probably would never like. So I bought it was a Shang Chi book. In is it Dike is the is it Dicron or
I think so, yeah.
yeah, that their art's great. So I bought that book just for their art. But yeah, I mean like Ryan Otley and a few other guys like and some of the books I'll buy just because of the cover. I'm like, I like the cover or whatever, but to actually I don't think I have a whole collection of any book other than Invincible because
Yeah.
that for me hit everything. The story was good, the art was great, the coloring was great, and it was a good read, and it had all of the elements for me that was like this is the perfect comic for me, um, you know. But I think for a lot of people, it's like a lot of people be like, "Oh, did you see this run on this?" You see, and I'm like, I'm the most like clueless guy when it comes to
Yeah.
comic books and like in the world of comics. And like some of my buddies are like really into it. They're like, "Oh yeah, did you know John so and so is gonna be here?" I'm like, "Who's that?" And they're like, "What do you mean you don't know who that is?" I was like, "Dude, I don't know. I live under a rock.
Yeah.
Like, I just kind of come home, draw what I feel like drawing, and it's kind of it. You know, kind of
Yeah, I
boring."
was talking to one of the guests the other day, and we were talking about how like there's really nobody like other than maybe like an Otley or something, or maybe Ryan Stegman, where nowadays you don't really see artists put in a run, like a long run on books. And it's really interesting. Like you'll maybe get like 3 or 4 issues and then they're gone. And
Right.
I miss the days of being like able to look forward to a long run, like, Capullo on Batman or something, or, back in the day, Jim Lee on X-Men or
Right.
Uncanny X-Men, like where these guys had these huge runs on books. And now it seems like once you get into the groove, you find an artist you like on a book, and then all of a sudden it changes, and you're like, man, where'd that guy go?
Yeah, and the thing is like it's got to be something with I don't know, in more of a contractual thing, but I don't know what it's like to work for like the big companies. Like I don't know if it's like, hey, we want to put you on this project, or we're not selling as many books with you running this title, or whatever the case
Yeah,
may be. I don't know what it is, but it's kind of like that again for TV shows for me. I'm like, oh, dude, like this artist is great, or this show is great, and it's like 1 or 2 seasons they cancel it, and I'm like, what the hell happened, right? So I don't know
yeah,
if it's like they didn't want to continue paying this person to do this run on the book or whatever. But like in my opinion, dude, like one of the most frustrating things for me is to again get like a graphic novel or a set, and it's like halfway through the artist changes to somebody and you're
yeah.
like, I don't like their art, and I hate to say that, right? But everybody has their own
Oh
what
yeah,
they like, their opinions, right? What they like and what they don't like. And for me, it's like, oh man, I bought this book because this guy was on it, and then halfway through, it's building up to a great story, and then it changes the art, and it just kills it for me. And
yeah. I'm the same way, man.
yeah, it's
That always gets me.
yeah, I got to figure out why they do that, man. I'm sure there's some kind of politics in it, in
Well,
the
they always say follow the money, right? Like it has
sure,
to be something to do with sales, or maybe, this book's having trouble, so we're going to put you on it because we know you have a big following, or
right?
whatever it may be. Yeah, I was talking to Otley. He was here recently at Washington SummerCon here in Washington State, and it happened to be like 5 minutes from my house, so it was amazing.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
got to go down and chat with him. And yeah, he can't talk about what he's working on now, but he did tell me that it's creator owned.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's like his original, sounds like his original idea, or a co idea that he's working on right now. So
That's
that's
awesome.
kind of all he would say. But man, I can't wait, because anything that guy's on,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, you know it's gonna be fire.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. I'd buy it and not know anything about it. I'd just like, all right, here's my money.
Yeah. Well, as far as your current work that you're doing, obviously, I think the underlying theme of most of this has been like keep it fun, like do the art that you like, and
Yeah.
and continue working on that. So these days, you doing commissions and things like that? You got any big projects
Um,
that stand out right now?
Not so much. I actually just moved cross country, so I just moved from Colorado to Vermont. So, I've been here probably a month now. So I kind of took a little hiatus. I have the commissions closed right now. I have a few that I'm kind of working on when I have the time, but nothing really big right now. Probably going to open up commissions probably soon, in the next month or two. Um, but yeah, man, just kind of back to turning a wrench and kind of doing art for fun. And
Nice.
for me that's what works for me, man. You know, and to make some money on the side doing it is also a plus.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah,
So,
it's kind of
always
where I'm at.
nice when you can make a little extra money doing something that you enjoy.
Right, right. And then it becomes a job, right, when you do it too much. So it's
They
kind of
call those
like,
a jobby,
yeah,
hobby
yeah,
job.
exactly.
Well, listen, Chris, I've loved having you on here today. I appreciate you taking the time. I know with the move and everything, we've been trying to coordinate this for a while.
Sure, man. Yeah,
You were one of
likewise.
the first people I reached out to when I came up with the idea for the podcast, and I'm glad we finally got you on, and I've had a wonderful time chatting with you.
Yeah, same, man. Thanks for bringing me on, and looking forward to seeing who else you bring on, dude. It's been fun.
I've got some pretty crazy guests lined up. If they all follow through, there's going to be some really cool.
That
One I can talk about that is confirmed is a gentleman named Anthony Francisco, and he actually is the guy who created Baby Groot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so concept artist for
Oh,
the
nice.
movies and everything for the MCU
Oh,
for
that's
for
awesome.
several years, and yeah, so funny enough, his kid does jujitsu, and I'd been
Oh, nice.
following him for a long time, and he like messaged me out of nowhere, like, "Oh, cool, my kid does jujitsu," and
Oh, that's
so I like
awesome, man.
kept in the back of my brain. I'm like, I gotta ask him to come on.
Sure.
Yeah, so he's gonna be coming on, and got some others in the works that are gonna blow people away. So
That's
I'm really
exciting, man.
excited.
That's
But
awesome.
I was very excited to have you on because I've been a big fan of your work for several years, as you know, and
Appreciate it, man.
I look forward to the next time. We'll have to get you on here again.
Sounds good, man. Just let me know.
Awesome, my friend. Well, listen, I am going to hit this outro. Hang out with me here for a moment.
No worries.
Everyone who's listening, make sure you go on. You can watch these podcasts on YouTube at Nerdy Musings. That's at symbol nerdy Mewzings. You can also listen to it anywhere you like to listen to audio versions of the podcast. So again, look it up on YouTube or any audio podcast. I'm going to hit the outro. Keep it nerdy, everybody.